would be recorded from a hotel in Florida as I'm trying to hold a little USB wire into the microphone. It's this still can't. This says it's working. Why isn't it working? What is happening? I'm just going to redo. I'm going to back out. Hold on. Here we go. Welcome to the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. Figured that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. It's the third time I've tried to do that. My hand is already cramping. My pinky is already cramping. Welcome into episode 100. It wouldn't be episode 100 if there weren't hilarity and absolute nonsense and tech issues. And here we are in beautiful Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I am not that far off from having to go meet some coworkers for a drink before we go out to a nice dinner, a very nice dinner. It's been a day full of meetings. And I knew for a fact last week, there was a very good chance the Flyers would name a head coach. If you've been following this show, if you've been following Snow the Goalie, even going back to last week, you'll know that Ant and I talked on my back patio, and we were very confident that there could be a new Flyers coach by the end of this week. And guess what? It happened. Now, I dove into a lot of thoughts on Rick Tocchet on Tuesday's show. The point of today's show isn't to go back. It's not to rehash everything I said on Tuesday. You are more than welcome and more than able to find that episode and a clip about Rick Tocchet on the channel over on YouTube on the Russ Joy Show YouTube channel. You can, of course, listen to it in the podcast feed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Pandora, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. Like, you know where to go for all of that fun stuff. But today's show, the 100th episode, episode number 100, recorded live from Fort Lauderdale, Florida on spotty Wi-Fi with a microphone where I have to hold the wire in like this. I will never again travel without my XLR setup. This is my own damn fault. I should have known better. This happened like 7 times yesterday, right? Where the wire falls out. There's like a spotty little connector in here. And I ended up switching over to the AirPods, which I might end up doing. If this drops out like 2 or 3 more times, we're going to go AirPod quality audio. It's going to be horrible, and we're all just going to deal with it together. But it's episode 100. There are no flowers. There are no balloons. There are no exciting things. Speaking of balloons, I do want to wish my dad a very happy birthday. I think it's the first time in my life I have not been home or home adjacent for my dad's birthday, which is kind of weird. But I called him today. And then my mom forgot that they drove me to the airport. Well, I drove myself, but they got me to the airport this week. My wife had work. My kids can't drive me to the airport. So an Uber, very expensive, not worth it. So all right, I switched over to AirPods. I'm not doing with this mic. I'm done with the wire. I'm done. It's not happening anymore. So hopefully we're okay. Hopefully this can be heard. I don't know if the internal microphone on this computer is any good. I could go there. Let's do a test. You guys let me know in the comments while we're going. This is what AirPods sound like. And this is what it sounds like coming out of the computer. So you guys can let me know. I will sit here and I will patiently wait for the next like 15, 20 seconds. You can tell me what sounds better. But I'm not plugging the microphone back in. I can't handle it. So if this is better, if the computer laptop mic is better, then I'll just roll with that. I think that's where I'm going to go. All right. Let's pick up where we left off on Tuesday, because as soon as it became abundantly clear that Rick Tocchet was going to be the coach of this team, people have gotten themselves worked into a frenzy. There have been countless examples. If you go on Twitter, if you go on Facebook, an incredible amount of people hate this hire, have hated the concept of this hire for well over a month. And I want to pull back the curtain a little bit. I want to take you back to the first time that I remember hearing Rick Tocchet's name being mentioned around the Flyers. This goes back to John Tortorella's employment, right? If you even go back a full year, right? Go back a full year to the Torts benching of Sean Couturier. At that point, there were names being bantied about. There was the idea that what if Torts doesn't finish out the season or doesn't finish out his contract, and instead he becomes kind of a lame duck for a year? Could the Flyers do that? Would they do that? Would Comcast like the idea of having to pay a Torts salary? Who could they bring in? And you'll remember that Craig Berube hit the coaching market. I'm going to move this. That lighting is driving me nuts. So anyway, last year, Berube became available, and there was the thought that Berube had connections to this organization, had obviously been the head coach of this team before, kind of got a little bit of a raw deal, has gone on to coach in other places, won a cup, like a very good coach. He's up there in Toronto. Fair chance that they have a nice little run in them. And I hope they do, because I'll be in Toronto during when the Stanley Cup final would be happening. So that'd be kind of nice. I have not watched any playoffs for the last couple of days while I've been in Florida. So, we'll see. But last year, the thought was there was always the chance that Berube would end up back here with the Flyers. And it didn't happen. Large part of that was thought that maybe the amount of money that the Flyers were paying to Torts, they just couldn't justify going out and bringing another guy in to be the coach. Okay. So that was last year. This year, there had been conversations and there had been a growing belief that maybe Torts was going to go up into the front office as an advisor. And the name Mike Sullivan was floated. We knew about that. The name Rick Tocchet has been around. Now, it doesn't mean that the Flyers had some grand plan to oust Torts at the start of the 2024-2025 season and bring in Rick Tocchet, who's got a really strong connection to this organization and especially to Keith Jones. So I don't want that to get misconstrued. There wasn't some grand plan at the start of the year that, by the summer of 25, Rick Tocchet was going to be the coach. But I think they have always kind of had this idea that if things were to go sideways here, if things were to go sideways with Tocchet in Vancouver, that there could be some business to be done here and that he could end up here. Okay. A lot of people don't like the hire. Why don't a lot of people like the hire? Depending on how you and who you follow, there's a belief that Tocchet's system is boring. There is a belief out there that Tocchet's system is a dump and chase. I'm not here to break down the X's and O's of Tocchet's system. We'll get into that at some point later this week or early next week on Snow the Goalie, and I'll let Bundy run lead on it. There is a belief out there that this is a mistake of a hire because it just proves that the Flyers are the old boys club. It's in the minds of some fans, it is further proof that the new era of orange is the old era of orange, just with a new coat of paint. And so I did a little bit of thinking about this over the last week or so, because last week I was essentially told it's going to be Tocchet. There was a very brief window where there was a thought that he might have flirted with going back to TV. And you saw him end up on TNT's studio show. And then I think it was Friedman might have been the one who put it out. Friedman and Drager, I think, had different info going over the last week or so, but that he might want to go back to TV, which to me was a leverage play. We know that Boston was interested. We know that the Flyers were interested at some point. Pittsburgh was interested. Seattle was interested. It always felt like Tocchet was going to want to come back out east if he was going to be a coach. So I never thought that Seattle was a real option. He won 2 Stanley Cups as an assistant coach with Pittsburgh in 2016 and 2017. That was possible. Strong connection here, obviously. Boston, depending on how you believe they're going to be able to turn things around and how quickly, maybe that would have been an intriguing place. People don't like the hire. Now, there are some that do, but the vast majority of the Flyers fan base that I see on both Facebook and X hates the hire. Hated it conceptually, hated it as soon as his name started popping up around Torts' firing. There were people that when the report came out, he might have gone back to TV. There were people certainly doing, victory laps. When the idea came up of him maybe going to Boston or Pittsburgh or Seattle, people were excited. I don't hate this hire, but I don't love this hire. So allow me to just kind of unpack this really quickly. I'm going to get out to the comments. This is the first time in quite a long time where the Flyers have made a hire and I've been apathetic, which is not great. Admittedly, The goal here is to get Flyers fans excited about this new era of orange, and it's supposed to kind of move the whole thing forward. And it doesn't mean that it's a bad choice. It doesn't mean that this whole thing is a waste, right? But this isn't the kind of hire that gets me, as somebody who's going to cover this team, it doesn't like get me jazzed up. Now, will Tocchet be a great source of quotes and short form content opportunities? 100%. Will Tocchet be a hell of an interview on Snow the Goalie? Indeed, he will. But is it the kind of hire that makes you go, all right, this is a transformative hire? No, I don't think so. Allow me to go back a little bit. So when I started working around covering the team in some capacity, it was the 2017-2018 season. Hackstall was here. And I think it was the first year that I was down covering the team with Anthony when we were doing like an early version of the Russ Joy Show. That was the year that Hextall got fired on the Black Friday game. We talked about Hextall maybe getting fired before Hackstall. So I've gotten to cover Hack. Scott Gordon came aboard. Gordon joined us over on Snow the Goalie. Fantastic interview. I liked Scott Gordon a lot. I thought that he did a great job of speaking to like the modern player. So I liked him. The Flyers brought in Alain Vigneault, who had never won a Stanley Cup, but had taken two different teams to a Stanley Cup final. And conceptually, I liked that hire. I felt like that was the kind of thing that maybe pushes this thing ahead. And while I didn't think that the team was going to light the world on fire, I liked it because it felt like a good proven track record. And it was a guy that I thought could maybe get a Flyer squad over the hump. Vigneault didn't work. Mike Gill was an interim coach. He wasn't very good at anything. Tortorella's hiring. On one hand, you go, that should be something that could take a mediocre squad and kind of get them up and over the bump. The problem, of course, is that in the timing of that hiring, Chuck Fletcher was here. He was trying to put some Band-Aids on things. You kind of knew that he was going to lose the power struggle ultimately to Torts, and he did. Tortorella cast a very big shadow. Some believed that he might have had more influence, or maybe had more influence than a head coach should have on the roster construction. You know, did he have more authority than Danny Briere? There were those kind of questions, those kind of narratives kind of permeated the last few years. And I said that once Torts got let go, this hire has to be one that is made between Danny Briere and Keith Jones. They have to put their stamp on it. And as the process kind of played out from Torts' firing through today, when it was officially announced that Rick Tocchet became the 25th head coach in the history of the Philadelphia Flyers, there weren't names that got you excited, right? Joel Quenneville is not a name that I think would have excited this fan base, and he went to Anaheim. Mike Sullivan is not a name that got me jazzed up. There were some people who liked the idea because he won cups with Pittsburgh, but he signed elsewhere. Pat Ferschweiler was a name that came out at one point, had just won a national championship, had previous experience as an AHL or as an assistant coach in the NHL. The name Jay McKee came out, but that was more of a maybe putting his name on the radar for other potential openings as maybe an assistant or something at the NHL level. You had Tocchet's name get floated out there. Jay Woodcroft's name was out there. There wasn't a name that came up that makes you go, that guy's perfect for the rebuild. That guy is the perfect player development coach. And that's the guy that's going to grow with this Matvei Michkov-led young core and push this thing forward for the next 7 or 8 years. That guy didn't exist. Some would have said that David Carl could have been that guy. He was never going to come here. I just don't think that it ever made sense. And I don't know when he's going to go to the pros. Eventually, you would assume that he will. But I don't think it's going to be anytime soon, and he signed an extension with Denver. So I guess all of this is to say I don't think there was a perfect candidate out there for the Flyers, which is kind of why I kept landing back on Brad Shaw was the right guy, right? Because you could hire him on a shorter-term deal. The annual money wouldn't have been exorbitant. And he's done a good enough job of developing players and building rapport with these players that I thought he made sense as a short-term hire. And maybe the team would prove that the little run they went on at the end of last year wasn't a fluke and that he can connect with this group of players in this locker room, which is a still relatively young team. Tocchet getting hired doesn't change any of that. And the one thing that I'll take as a big positive is the way that Quinn Hughes talked about Rick Tocchet. And that's the kind of thing that I do want to take a look at when I think about, like, all right, if there is a positive to come out of this, I look at Quinn Hughes' comments about Rick Tocchet, because while I kind of threw out the joking idea of like, oh, the best thing that could possibly happen to the Flyers is that Tocchet comes here and then Quinn Hughes is going to make his way over here. That wasn't going to happen, right? He's likely going to end up going to New Jersey if he eventually leaves Vancouver. But I had the quote here from Quinn. I just lost it. I'll bring it up. But he was pretty effusive in his praise of Rick Tocchet as a head coach. All right, here we go. So Quinn Hughes said back in April, he's an amazing coach. You look at me individually and my game, he's been amazing for me, amazing for a lot of guys. He's just a great person, first of all. That's a guy you want to compete for, you want to play for. He's a terrific coach. Last year, he won the Jack Adams Award, and this year, I think he's probably been even better. But whatever he does, it's his decision. Obviously, I'd like to think we have him back, and I think he knows that. So that's Quinn Hughes. That's arguably your most important player if you're a Canucks fan. Now, in fairness, it is very, very hard to envision a scenario where Quinn Hughes ends up here. But if you're thinking about the next stage and the next level of taking this rebuild to being something that does ultimately create sustainable winning, you're going to have to attract players. And so maybe, just maybe, part of the Tocchet hire here, right? Because if let's just assume that Danny Briere was in the same mentality that I was. There's not a transformational, generational coach available. If you're comparing Pat Ferschweiler, Brad Shaw, and Rick Tocchet, do players really know Pat Ferschweiler? Or are they going to be attracted to playing for him as free agents? Maybe not. Does Brad Shaw move the needle for free agents? Probably not. If Tocchet gives you an advantage, not in 2025, but with a 2026 free agent class, is that the kind of thing that gives you that little bit of an edge? You know that you're going to have a lot of cap flexibility coming up in the 2026 offseason. Is that the deciding factor that leads you to go out and get a Rick Tocchet? Now, mind you, I broke all this down on Tuesday. There was a horrific, toxic breakdown in that locker room in Vancouver last year with Elias Pettersson and JT Miller that led to JT Miller getting jettisoned into the sun, getting sent to New York. And like, we have to at least acknowledge that some of the responsibility for not being able to smooth that over probably falls a lot on the locker room. It falls on leadership, but does it fall on the head coach? Part of it might. We don't know. It'll kind of be the responsibility of the assembled media at some point. It probably won't be at an introductory press conference, but at some point it's going to be asked. It has to be asked. And it's not because you think that there are rifts in the Flyers locker room right now and you don't want those to fester and become another Pettersson versus JT Miller situation, but like, it's a fair question to have of the head coach. You know, there was this massive drop off in production from Pettersson last year, like enormous, right? Enormous decrease in point production. But I think it's a fair question. You know, what happened? What happened within that locker room, within that dressing room that led to those two players being at odds and Vancouver having to move off of one of them? What happened, right? And listen, he might not ultimately give you a straight answer, but I think from the Flyer fan perspective, you probably want to know that whatever was going on there preceded Tocchet and was something that like no one was going to be able to smooth over. And maybe just having that little bit of kernel of truth, that little nugget to kind of put in your head makes you feel a little bit better. Because ultimately what you don't want to have happen is you don't want there to be a potentially toxic situation here. Now, in fairness, this is a locker room that has largely been viewed as anti-ego, not a group of guys that have players with oversized egos that outweigh their production on the ice. So that's a positive. It seems to be a good group of guys. So that is a positive, okay? But again, does Tocchet's hiring make me like jump out of my seat and feel like, oh yeah, this team is a cup contender in the next 2 years? No. More of what is going to happen here over the next 2 years comes down to asset management and comes down to free agency. If Danny Briere isn't able to woo a free agent in 2025 via restricted free agency or unrestricted free agency in 2026, if he can't get an impact player that way, if he can't parlay any of the first round picks this year into either draft capital for next year or a potential player that could actually help this team this year and beyond, then it's more of a failure on the front office. Right? I've been very clear about this. I think that Briere is going to get aggressive this offseason. I don't think it's going to be through free agency. I think he's going to get aggressive enough. He's going to address one of the holes in goal, probably bring in another steady defenseman, and hopefully bring in a steady center that can play like 2C minutes, right? But isn't an albatross of a contract like Kevin Hayes was when he was brought in, right? I think that Briere is going to do enough with this roster. And this Eastern Conference was such a fucking disaster last year that, like, it stands to reason the Flyers are going to compete for a playoff spot next year. And while there's a large group of people that want to see them tank for Gavin McKenna, it ain't happening. Now, if they have an unintentional tank season, if they overvalue the players they have and they are woefully off, like Chuck Fletcher was, especially in his last year, that's something entirely different. But if you're a Flyers fan right now and you're looking for some positivity, I will, I guess, hold on to the Quinn Hughes quotes, the knowledge and the belief across the league that Tocchet has forged some really strong relationships with players and that he could ultimately be somebody that can help bring a free agent to this city. Now, does that mean that in 2026 or whatever, you're going to be able to go out and get a Connor McDavid to come in because he respects Rick Tocchet? Probably not. Probably not. If you have the money to attract a player, great. Are the Flyers now going to have an edge if they wanted to go after Mitch Marner this offseason? I can't imagine that this really helps or hurts. I don't think it really changes anything. You still have to create the cap flexibility, and they don't have it. This could change the calculus if the Flyers were interested in Elias Pettersson around the trade deadline. If Pettersson and Tocchet have a bad relationship, it takes him off the table. If Pettersson and Tocchet have a strong relationship, it would almost kind of indicate that the seeds that might have been planted around the trade deadline between the Flyers and Vancouver and between Danny Briere and the GM in Vancouver, maybe that is a place that you pick up. And can Tocchet get the most out of Pettersson? Again, we have to know what led to the massive decline in his overall stats a season ago. Now, is Tocchet a great coach? I don't know. He won a Jack Adams Award 2 years ago. And then he oversaw a team that woefully underperformed this year and a team that had this awful incident. Okay. I don't know. So when I said to you guys before, like, I'm apathetic about the hire, that's where I'm at. There are potential positives. And if ultimately he helps to recruit a legitimate free agent to this town, whether it's this year, maybe it's getting a guy who signs an offer sheet to fully buy into and believe in the vision here, great. If he's able to help you woo a free agent in 2026 and it's somebody who fundamentally changes the trajectory of this team, great. If that was a big part of the hire, awesome. So I do want to take you to some of the comments here, and I want to give you the comments that came out from the press release in case you missed it, because I think that Danny Briere, Keith Jones, and Dan Hilferty all kind of pointed in the direction that maybe the free agent thing is part of it. Like, maybe it had something to do with his hiring. So I do want to have the option there. I do want to kind of say that maybe there's a little bit of something to the idea that Tocchet could be a guy who could maybe bring some people in. Let me see. I'm actually going to bring up the Briere quote here on the screen. So hopefully you guys are going to be able to read this. I did fix the issue that prevented me from doing this on Tuesday. So we have this now. So here's Danny Briere. His comment on the hiring of Rick Tocchet as head coach. Danny says, I am very happy to welcome Rick Tocchet as our head coach. During this process, it became clear that Rick was the absolute right coach to lead our team. He has enjoyed the highest level of success, both as a player and coach. Rick's ability to teach and understand his players, combined with his passion for winning, brings out the best in young players at different stages of their development and has earned the respect and confidence of highly talented all-stars and veteran players alike. So there you have the idea of development. You have the idea of young players appreciating and liking him and veterans and all-stars liking him. That to me reads like We believe that Rick Tocchet is going to help us acquire players, make Philadelphia a destination again. Will it happen? Remains to be seen. Will it happen? You have to kind of hope so. And if he doesn't help you recruit free agents, if this hire doesn't ultimately get you elite talent, well, then I don't know. I don't know what that means. Dan Hilferty had the following to say as well. He said, from the first conversation I had with Rick, it struck me how deeply he cares about the Philadelphia Flyers, our city, and the fans. Rick's track record speaks for itself. He has not only been successful at different stages of his career, but he has a way of connecting with his players and staff. I strongly believe he is the ideal person to unite and lead us toward our ultimate goal of building this team into a perennial contender again. Keith Jones said, we are thrilled to have Rick lead our team into the future. What is impressive about Rick is that players gravitate towards him and develop a strong relationship in the process. There is a genuine trust that he will do everything he can to bring success to the team. So you take Hilferty saying he deeply cares about the organization, the team, the city. You take Danny's comments and Jonesy's comments really implying that players love playing for this guy, that they forge a bond. There you go. Like, that to me is the vision. He's going to come in here and he's going to be able to bring players along with him. But we have to find out. The Quinn Hughes quote is great. But again, a lot of questions around the JT Miller and Elias Pettersson thing. So I want to go out to the comments here on YouTube, X, and Facebook. And then I got to tell you about the latest on the Matvei Michkov situation, because if you missed it, there was a car crash that happened, was it yesterday? I mean, Dubai time is kind of weird. I think it was yesterday. Matvei Michkov, there was a car rental that he was apparently in the passenger seat. There was a salacious story that was going around that has since been refuted. Now there are claims of extortion. We're going to get there in a little bit. But before we do, I'm going to get to the comments here really quickly and see how people are feeling about the Tocchet hire. So if you haven't done so already, you like the video, share the video, subscribe on YouTube, drop a comment. If you're on X, you have to click the video first, go into old Periscope mode, drop a comment there. All right, here we go. Obi-Wan says, yeah. Ford says, during dinner time? Yeah, can't stay tuned, unfortunately, although I did see Ford stayed. And says, art show at the Sun School at 6. All the best. All the best. Let's see. A bunch of stuff we have to go over. Okay. Kenny Jones says, happy 100th episode. Thank you. Steven over on YouTube says, breaking news, Russ Joy has joined Rick's staff as the power play coach. Could I be a worse power play coach than Rocky Thompson? Yes, I could be. I actually could be. I could be significantly worse. D. Milla over on X says, the real Rocket Tocchet. KW1323 on YouTube. Totally underwhelmed by this hire. Just seems the same old era of orange. Lantros 2 over on YouTube. I'm on the fence with Tocchet. Obviously a very good coach, but is it the right team, right group of guys? Can he get them to buy in? We'll see. I think it's a fair way to look at it. The Jack Adams thing is kind of tricky. I don't think that Jack Adams proves that you are the elite of the elite, that you are the most elite coach there is, but it shouldn't be, I don't know. You shouldn't like understate how important it is. At the same time, I think it's kind of easy to overvalue how important it is. Got some birthday shout outs to my dad. Thank you. Madeline, Greg Bondarenko. Forgive my dad the good old thumbs up. How old is my dad today? Is 78 today. Ooh. Life comes at you fast. If you don't stop to take a look around, you could miss it. Ferris Bueller, Russ Joy. That's right. Okay. Let's see. B-Rad is Rad says, lower the ceiling, lower the floor with this hire? Nope. No. This raises your ceiling. It probably raises your floor a bit. The real question I have is, how much does this change what the ceiling is for this team versus if Brad Shaw had been a short-term hire as head coach? And all right, if you want to go with the idea of Jack Adams winner and being able to get the most out of his team, it probably does raise your ceiling. I think your floor is probably about the same. I think that Brad Shaw would have been a very competent head coach, and you still would have been in the mix for a playoff spot next year. Again, assuming I'm right and that Danny's going to tweak this roster the way that I expect him to. Tweak makes it sound like minor. I think he's not going to overhaul the roster, but I think he's going to make enough significant enough moves that like this team certainly finds themselves in the mix for a playoff spot. And they do so in a way that like doesn't feel like a waste of a season. So he probably raises your ceiling a decent bit. If you're going like WAR in baseball, wins above replacement, right? Tocchet probably gives you an extra 5 or 6 wins over what you would have gotten with Shaw. And again, I think Shaw probably could have gotten this team close to the playoffs again or gotten them back to the playoffs next year. So make of that what you will. Seth Pamilia over on YouTube says, I love Rick Tocchet, the player, and I love the person. Show me the data that says Rick Tocchet is a good coach. Here's your downside. And this has been something I've harped on. It's the one thing that was my big hesitation. He only has 1 playoff series win in about 9 seasons as a head coach. He's only been to the playoffs twice as a head coach. One was that 2019-2020 weird season that I think ended up going into the bubble, right? And then, of course, when he led Vancouver to the top record in the division in 109 points that season. So it's been twice that he's made the playoffs as a coach. It's not exactly ideal. You do have to remember that there was a solid enough stretch in there where he was the head coach of Arizona, and God help anybody who ever had to coach in Arizona. Andrew Fawcett, kind of with the apathetic idea here. I don't hate it, but I'm not super excited about it either. Let's see. CMZ loves the hire, though, says, Talk, baby. Guy's a bulldog. I think that people are going to like Tocchet when he's here. I think that, like, the weird fanaticism that I thought was just very odd from, like, how people became towards fanboys where he could do no wrong. I don't think you're going to have quite that with Tocchet, but I do think that you're going to get the fan base will get behind him. I think that for as many people are against the hire right now, he's going to change their mentality, change the perception, and that by this time next year, you'll probably be talking about Rick Tocchet, who took a team that was 4th in the draft lottery, drafted 6th overall, and turned them into a playoff team. And they had a really competitive first-round playoff loss. But Matvei Michkov improved, and that you saw enough players kind of take that next step. That's what I think the goal should be for next year. Make the playoffs, be competitive in that first-round series. Let's see if you can get 4, maybe 5 of the younger players on the team to take another step. If by this time next year you feel like Owen Tippett has taken an actual step forward, Tyson Forster has taken an actual step forward, Mishkov continues very important growth trajectory. You see a Cam York, if he's here, which I don't know, he might not be, but a Cam York take another step. A Jamie Drysdale season that kind of follows what the last month or so of the season was for him this year and kind of become that, PP1 quarterback. If you see that, you start feeling a little bit better about things. And even if you do lose in the first round next year, if all those guys take a step forward and they don't totally like shrivel up into nothing, like the carriage doesn't turn back into a pumpkin with those guys in the postseason, you're probably feeling better about the hire a year from now. Raymond Supper over on YouTube says, I revisited the Lightning's 2010 season, the last under Tocchet. A 20-year-old Stamkos scored 50 goals. 19-year-old Hedman played 21 minutes and was -3. Why didn't they make the playoffs? Went through 7 goalies. And that is the key, and that is why I think Briere is probably going to make their number 1 offseason priority, that other goalie spot. Kolosov apparently is back in Belarus. I think his NHL career is effectively done unless there's a team that is so hurting for goalies that they want to guarantee him a backup spot in the NHL, but I don't see that happening. And then, of course, you have the question around, like, what are the Flyers going to do with Ivan Fedotov? Could he just go back to Russia? Maybe. I don't think that there are going to be teams that are going to, like, fall over themselves to trade for him with that contract. Do the Flyers eat some of the money just to give him an opportunity elsewhere because they don't believe it's here? Maybe. But I think they're going to go get another goalie. B-Rad is Rad says, I support the brass, knows what they are doing with this hire. It's not a bad hire. Apathetic has like a negative connotation. So like maybe I need to like change the way that I'm expressing it. It's not like I go, fuck it. Like whatever. It's not that. I'm just not super high about the hire and I'm not super low. I'm just like, all right. I'm in like one of those spots where like with Tocchet, I say like, all right, it's like a prove it thing, right? I don't think he's a bad coach. He wanted Jack Adams. I don't think he's a great coach. He wanted Jack Adams. It doesn't move me. It doesn't spiritually move me. It doesn't move my hockey spirit. But it also doesn't make me want to light myself on fire. So I don't know. It could end up being a really great hire. I'm open-minded. open-minded. Andrew Fawcett says Torts wasn't going to be the coach next year, whether he was fired or not. I don't know. It's funny because a lot of people who were of the belief that Torts was going to end up in the front office when the firing went down were like, oh, no, that was never going to happen. But there was a lot of smoke around that for a good long while. I just don't know. I think that if Torts had made it to the end of the year and things hadn't gone really sideways and Sullivan hits the market, I think Sullivan had a better chance to be your head coach here. But it was very clear that was never going to happen once Torts was let go. And by the way, the Rangers are a much better situation if you're trying to, make a run to the cup next year. It's not even close. Chris Freed says the more things change, the more they stay the same. I get the mentality. I do. Landers 2 says, I can honestly say not one of the candidates got me excited, so it's basically meh. Let's just see how it goes. Video guy Amadeo says, I'm at Acme. Does anyone need anything? Yes. But it's going to take too long to get it down here to Florida, so that won't help. JMJR13 says, I'm not thrilled, but I don't hate it. To me, number one priority is still fixing this roster and getting difference makers on this team. Once the roster takes shape, then we can decide on the coach and system. I think it's a fair way to approach it. And again, that's why I said I think so much of this falls on Danny, right? I think Danny's got to get aggressive this offseason. I want to imagine that the Flyers are going to go after a restricted free agent. As we all know, Wyatt Johnston was my target. He re-upped in Dallas. He's off the market. I would like to see Danny at least explore restricted free agency. And I get the notion that there are going to now be teams that are going to say,
oh, you can't possibly go after an RFA because I don't know if you saw what happened with the New York Islanders this year, but they jumped up to number 1. They jumped 10 spots to number 1. You can't possibly get rid of the first round pick now because there is a chance that if you trade your pick and you miss the playoffs next year, you could have had Gavin McKenna and now he's gone.
Those people need their heads examined. The likelihood of you seeing a team jump 10 spots again next year to get the number 1 overall pick is practically 0. I mean, it might even be less than 0. It might be a negative percentage. It can't be a negative percentage. I'd say it's like a 2% chance, probably even less. Just because something stands out as an anomaly doesn't make it the truth going forward. It doesn't mean that every year now you're going to have one team that jumps up from like 16 and they move up the 10 spots they can, and now they're going to pick at 6. And ooh, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. It doesn't. Okay. Colin Gamble says, I fear it's just a new era of mid. It is a fair critique. It is a fair criticism. It is a fair feeling for you to have, but I don't think it's going to be a new era of mid because I have talked to these guys, the front office, away from the camera, and I do think that there is a very clear understanding of how you build a team in this league, and I just don't think that they are delusional like Chuck Fletcher was, and I don't think they're going to totally dismiss their scouts the way that Ron Hextall did when he picked Nolan Patrick. I don't think that's what these guys are. I do have some faith in them that they are going to be able to build a better team. Eric Wisniewski on YouTube thought that Tocchet was going to go to the Penguins. I think a lot of people thought that was a legitimate chance. Madeline Kemp says, or Madeline says, I'm indifferent about the hire. I'm waiting to see how he does with the Flyers before I form an opinion. Totally fair. Although, how dare you have a fair and rational approach to this, wanting to see how it looks before you just decide it's a terrible hire and the worst thing that's ever happened to the Flyers. How dare you? I'm kidding. Zilla092. Well, the hate to everyone. Let's see. K-Dub says nothing exciting about the hire. Dersh says, awesome, we found the next guy before the guy. Andrew Fawcett asks, will he answer Ant's questions? He will. I fully expect that we'll have Tocchet not that long from now on Snow the Goalie. I'd fully expect that to be something that's going to happen. Greg Monterrego says, I hope he won't make fun of the silly podcast. He won't. Ford says that awkward first interview with Russ and Rick, 610-632. That'll be totally fine. I would honestly hope that a guy like Tocchet, who spent, what was it, a year, 2 years on TV critiquing what was happening in the league, would respect the fact that somebody might not totally be in love with or like head over heels with a hire without having anything critical to say. That would almost seem like a hypocritical stance to take, so I think it'll be fine. Let's see. Andrew Fawcett says, need to come up with some shirt ideas. Speaking of shirts, Ross. Oh, shit. Andrew, I do have it. I have it ready. It's been sitting on my piano bench. Let's see. K-Dub says Bundy's probably over the moon with the hire. Bundy did go on Twitter, said something very positive about it. So there you go. Zach Anderson, who I haven't seen here before. Zach, thanks for finding the show. Like the video, share the video, subscribe. Says, Russ, on a scale of 1 to you going bald, how angry are you? Oh, not because I have a 5 head or a 6 head, just like ripping my hair out. How angry am I? I'm not angry. Angry, I don't even think is like a fair way to look at it. It's not the hire that I wanted at the start of the offseason, but it's not one, on review that I feel is like a catastrophic one. I thought when Torts got hired, it was a really bad idea because it was going to lead to a power struggle with Fletcher and that he was going to raise the floor of the team too much. And I thought that, like, based on that team that Tortorella was coming in to coach, they needed to tear it down. In this case, like, I think they've done enough of the tearing down. They've gone about as far as they were going to with the tear down. And so, like, I can't be angry. I just can't. Is there a coaching candidate out there that would have actually pissed me off? No. If they brought in Quenneville, I would have had legitimate questions. Like, how do you go from Tortorella to Quenneville? No, I don't think there's anybody that would have actually pissed me off. There was the rumor going around that Luke Richardson might end up getting hired as an assistant. That has not gotten confirmed yet. So make of that what you will. Let's see. Dersh says, Shaw can't get credit for the end of the season. Those were spite wins for their former coach. I disagree. I think that Shaw actually did get those guys believing in each other. It went far enough beyond the new coach bump of like 2 to 3 games that I think that there was some actual like good hockey coaching behind it. I think Shaw's a good coach. I saw Kevin Kurtz put out that no decision has been made on whether or not Tocchet is going to have Shaw on his staff and that they're expecting to have a resolution there in the next few days. So we'll see. Sutliff says, I think Tocchet is an excellent stopgap coach until the Flyers are ready to be a cup contender. If he wins a playoff series or 2, he would be a successful hire. I haven't really thought of it as like the stopgap thing. You think about it, he's 61. I don't know. Stopgap seems a little bit tricky, but okay. Let's see. Andrew Fawcett says, I think he left Vancouver because they traded the wrong player in JT Miller and kept Pettersson. Like I said, the Pettersson thing is weird. I think that the Flyers were interested in Pettersson. I think that even around the deadline, they did a little bit of poking around to see if Pettersson was around and available. And if he and Tocchet don't have a good relationship, you can pretty much call that one dead. Although it feels like the Flyers fandom as a whole didn't exactly seem jazzed up by going out and getting Pettersson, even though he would have been a 1C on this team. Let's see. Zach Anderson talking about the Pettersson. JT Miller says, not even a question about like asking what happened. Just, do you think you could have done more to smooth it over? I think that one's fair. I do. Dersh says, Russ isn't yelling. I don't like the presentation. I'm not going to yell in a hotel. Can you imagine? Like, those of you who watched on Tuesday or listened in the podcast feed, like, I had a guy. So this hotel room is like, okay, it's fine. It's a good hotel, right? It's not anything that my company's great, so it's not them. This hotel is advertised as like being on the water, which is great, except my room is not on the water. My room is butted up against a parking lot. And not only that, but I got in here the first night and the toilet wouldn't stop running, which is not ideal. And I couldn't control the thermostat, also not ideal. And the fridge didn't work, also not ideal. And it wasn't a cheap hotel. So I was like, this should be better. And so yesterday when I was doing the show, I don't know, like what's the official word that you use for the guy I think is more than just a plumber. Not that being a plumber isn't like good, like the handyman of the hotel or whatever came in to like go fix something, and they was like knocking on the door a bunch of times, and I'm talking into a microphone, and they tried to talk to me while I was doing the show. It was a lot. There's a lot yesterday, but I'm not going to yell because it would just be crazy. Okay. Yukon 456 says, I heard Tocchet drove Mishkov off the road. Is that true? No, but we are going to get there in a second. Tony Louis says, new era of orange is just shill code for same shit, different day. I get why people feel like it. I do. DD Skinner says, thank God you don't have the opinion that Charlie has on us older folks saying we love it. No, we don't. There are some people who love the hire, and there are some who don't. I don't think it matters how old you are or how long you've been a fan of the team. I don't think that necessarily dictates or indicates, universally that you love or hate the pick at head coach. Linda Joseph says, meh, same old with this organization. Love Tocchet, the player, but Dump and Chase went out with MTV playing music videos. TRL, baby. Zillow says, I think everybody needs to chill and will be pleasantly surprised. This is a great hiring. We're going to see. We're going to see it this year. I think it's going to go okay. I really do. But we'll see. I don't know. Phantom 67 says, this is how I feel about the hiring. Fire Rick Tocchet. How long is it going to take into the season for people to start saying, fire Tocchet, bring in another coach? Will it happen on opening night? We'll find out. Rick Warren says, offer sheet Hughes too. He likes playing for Tocchet and he's next door to Jersey. He's a free agent in 2027, I think. Like, he's still a while away. Now, would I back up the Brinks truck with assets and approach Vancouver about Quinn Hughes? I would, as long as he signs an extension. Obviously, most people think that he's going to end up in New Jersey when his contract is up with Vancouver and go play with his brothers. Entirely possible. Him over on YouTube says, the Flyers are in no spot to add pieces right now. They need to tank for these next 2 seasons at least. Just go through while Mishkov is young and then add pieces around him. That will never happen. They will not tank another season, even though Gavin McKenna looks like the next generational prospect. It will not happen. And if you set your expectations that they're going to tank, you will be very disappointed. Ryan Reese over on YouTube says, Tocchet hire will be fine for year 1. I agree. Totally agree. Jared over on X with a rational take. Not the coach I wanted, but willing to give him a chance. How dare you? How dare you have rational thought, Jared? Greg Mack says, I'm all for Tocchet, but he should be forced to wear a mullet wig like he sported when he played here. I like that. I think that might end up being, I think it's that for sure. Let's see. Steven thinks that I'm 38. I'm not 30. I'm 34. I just have lines on my head and I look old because I have 4 kids. And if you don't have 4 kids, you won't understand the exhaustion of it all. Yeah. Let's see. Joe Fisher says the Flyers need a center, goalie, and to do something with the defense. I think they're going to. I do. I think they're not going to get a 1C, a 1D, and a 1G this year, but you can start to kind of chip away at some of them. Eric Wisniewski says, I feel like Rick being back at home will make him a better coach. As a player, he was a blue-collar player, gave fans what we wanted. He knows what Philadelphia is about. I believe he will install that. Can I just say really quickly, here is the thing about Tocchet. The guy understands Philadelphia. You can say what you will about how important it is, whether or not a head coach or a player or an executive knows what it's like to be in the city that they get hired, right? You can value that however you want. Philadelphia is a totally different beast, man. It is a totally different beast. So being somebody who has played here, who has coached against this team, who understands what it's like and what the mentality of the Philadelphia fan is, that does matter. You can't go out of your way to like applaud coaches and executives for having good social, emotional intelligence and then like not count that when a hire is made. Rick Tocchet gets what it is to play in Philadelphia. He had 2 stints as a player here. He gets it. And he's not somebody who's going to like wilt under the bright lights of being in Philadelphia. So I view that as a positive. Rick Warren says players like playing for Tocchet. Maybe that'll help get some better talent. Correct. Steven says if we can get some talent, this could work out. Exactly. Eric says, I feel like Rick won't make players miserable and will let Mishkov play his game. Listen, make no mistake about it. Okay. Tocchet will be able to coach Mishkov how he wants. However, he's not an idiot. So much of his success as a coach this year is going to be predicated on Mishkov being successful, not hitting a sophomore slump, not hitting a wall. Okay. So make of that what you will. Greg Bondarenko says, if a free agent sees the Flyers improve and a bright future, I can see 2026 being a great chance to lure players with the money they'll have. Correct. That's why I think it's more of a 2-year build here through free agency. Bus Campers says, not my preferred pick, but hopeful this works out. I'm assuming Shaw is on the staff. Again, there has been no decision made yet about whether Shaw will be here. Remember, it was Shaw and Dillabaugh, the goalie coach, were the only 2 that were retained from last season's coaching staff. So if you're the front office, you want to give Rick Tocchet his ability to get his, like, pick his assistants. I will point out that it has been, at least in Philadelphia, the tradition, I guess, or the modus operandi has been sometimes the front office has an assistant coach who is more their choice, and then there's another one who ends up being like the head coach's choice. You kind of try to appease both sides. I would expect that Shaw is going to be here, but, really depends. Stir & Co. says, do you think Philly should have kept Kuzmenko for the Russian connection with Mishkov? No, not necessarily. And again, if they really wanted to, they can go after Kuzmenko again in the offseason. I don't think that should have been a determining factor in anything. Joe Fisher says, Tocchet talks to his players and likes to teach. There are reports Torts doesn't. Yeah, correct. Him says, I think Rabenkin will be a great fit for the Flyers next season and would love to see him with Mishkov. I think he'll get a look. Mark K over on YouTube says, Mitch Marner, thoughts? I'm not big on paying someone lots of money who's more of an assist guy than a scorer. I think that he'll get a look. The question is, like, I think that it's more likely than not that he's out in Toronto. Could Toronto look to move one of their other big money guys? Could a Tavares become available? Maybe. Do you look at, just double check something here really quick before I totally talk out of my ass, but, like, I'm pretty sure that I have Tavares's thing in my head, like, that I've got his contract in my head correctly. But again, I want to make sure that I'm not a total dolt here before I say it out loud. Like, there is a thought that maybe Toronto does make it a priority to re-sign Marner, but, like, you are paying only a few guys a ton of money. And so at some point something has to give, and you are going to have to make a call on which guy you can ultimately bring back. I don't know why this isn't working. I'll find it. I think Tavares could end up becoming available. And if so, if you're the Flyers, do you consider making a move for a Tavares who's definitely, like, beyond his best days, but do you look at trying to go out and get that kind of guy for next year? Let me see. Is he not under contract? Is he a free agent? And maybe I did. Did I make this up? Did I totally make it up? Let's see. Oh yeah, he's on the open market this year. Okay. So Tavares could theoretically be available to the Flyers. Does that move the needle for you as a fan? I would say that, like, if you're looking for a short-term guy that you would want to put with Mishkov, Tavares could be a really good signing. He could be. That is yeah, you know what? I could be talked into it. I could very easily be talked into the idea of bringing Tavares in here to give you some stability at center. It maybe allows you to let Lushenko stay down for another year to develop, that you're not rushing him to the NHL like they did with Nolan Patrick. Could Tavares be a passable enough player for a year, 2 years, 3 years? He's 34. I think that there's a potential. It just depends. Like, will he ultimately decide that he wants to re-up in Toronto and do it at a dirt cheap rate? It's possible. I think that's probably where most people's heads would be at, is that Tavares would be hell-bent on staying. Depends. If they lose Marner, and if Toronto gets knocked out of the playoffs earlier than they wanted to again, and they don't really do a lot to improve the squad, then what? I don't know. I lost where I was with the comments there before, so I'm going to try to, like, jump around here because I want to get to this Mishkov thing, and then I have to run off to go to dinner with some coworkers down here in Florida. Let me take a look here really quick. Rick Warren says, I could see Forster being the most improved player next season with the coaching change. Mishkov too. That would be a real positive. Nick Johnson says, the draft is my favorite part of every season. Danny's the only GM I've seen who says I'm rebuilding and is making the effort to do so, even though we all know the front office is against it. Let's see. Hassan says, I'm so sorry that you guys hired Tocchet. Okay. And he says you guys, so I assume that means that Hassan is not a Flyers fan. I can't make out who's in the picture there. Let's see. Crimson Kate says, this feels like the same old, but I will wait to see who the Flyers draft and especially who Danny signs in the next 2 years. I think that, like, listen, I don't like the idea, right, of always saying, like, oh, you're a year away. You have to be patient. You have to come back next year. But like, you do have to give a little bit of grace to this front office. You can certainly like feel the way that you want to feel about what happened with Cutter Gauthier. You can certainly feel the way that you want to feel about Alexei Kolosov and the Ivan Fedotov situation. But I'd also point out that like the most positive thing to come out of all of this is they were able to get Matvei Michkov over here much earlier than expected. That is a positive. They now have a coach that I think is going to be much easier for them to work with, and Rick Tocchet, and is probably going to be a guy that guys in the locker room are going to enjoy being around a lot more than John Tortorella. Tom Frenney says, I like the hire. I think he's more invested in the organization than Torts was or any other potential hire may have been because of the ties. Players like him, give him a shot. See, we're all about a little bit of positivity here. Purple Crayon says, Ian LaPerriere. I don't know what that is. Maybe as an assistant, I guess is the thought. Maybe. I don't know. Let's see. I really have to skip around here real quick. Mark K says, Kaprizov in summer 2026, the old Chuck Fletcher draft pick. Would be kind of funny if he ended up here. Chuck would probably cry from a distance. Michael Pearden says, could be worse, and glad that they picked a head coach now that they can focus on what really matters, building this team with more talent. I agree with that. I think if this had gone on for a few more weeks, you'd start to get a little bit worried. Draft is next month. You want to have like a cohesive vision of like what you're going after in the draft and in the trade market. Dave Wallace says, let's pray he doesn't try to change Mishkov's style. I don't think he will. Stern Co says, Rossi and Kaprizov, future Flyers, laughing, crying face. It'd be pretty badass if it happened. Will it? Matthew Stevens says, can we hire Fish Wiener to take Lappy's place? Let's see. Ford said that he was leaving like 30 minutes ago, and Ford is introducing himself to him. Interesting. Let's see. Yukon 456 says only rational Flyers fans or Russ Joy fans. I think that's good. Is that good? I don't actually know. Let's see. Flyers Purgatory says a coach cannot get fans excited, but he can bore the fuck out of fans or completely turn them off. Yeah, I think that's probably fair as well. All right, let me see. I mentioned being spiritually moved. Ford says Russ is spiritually moved by the new Pope. Is he a Philly guy? 610-632-09. Last thing here. I see a bunch of people talking about Tavares to Toronto and all that. Purple Crayon clarifies. The Lappy comment was about coaching hires. I'd have been really fucking mad. If Ian LaPerriere had somehow become the head coach of this team, I would have been very angry. Yeah. Purple Crayon's right. Yeah, that would have pissed me off something fierce. Not that Lappy's a bad guy, not that Lappy's a bad coach, but like he's not an NHL head coach, or at least not this NHL head coach. Okay. That's where we're at right now on Tocchet. It is episode 100, which means we are like 40 seconds away from going over an hour, which is normal, par for the course with the show. But before we head out, I do want to say really quickly, are you ready for this? Okay. I don't know what just happened with, okay. Here we are. Ready? Mishkov. So there was the story going around that Mishkov was involved in an accident in Dubai, that there was a car accident in Dubai, and there was a very ridiculous over-the-top claim that's like being made that there was alcohol involved, that there were drugs involved, that there were workers involved, ladies of the night perhaps involved in the accident, and that there was a thing going around that like, oh, Mishkov somehow got to Dubai without a passport. That's illegal. He wasn't driving the car. That's illegal. It was in his name. Blah, blah. So then we get clarification early this morning, and it was a report that went out through a Russian site, Match TV. And so I'm going to just kind of walk you through this really quickly to kind of give you an idea, because when I saw the picture come out of the car being smashed, we'll throw to that really quickly. When I saw the image of the car, it's an expensive car. It's an expensive rental. You're in Dubai. A lot of Russian players like to go to Dubai in the off season. So that's not unusual. Really nice BMW here. Passenger side, dented up. Now the real concern was here. I'll see if I don't think I'm able. Can I zoom? Let me see if I can zoom here real quick. Let's see. There we go. So this is the concerning part if you were a Flyers fan, right? Like if you looked at this and when the word came out that Mishkov was in the passenger seat, what you see here is a smashed windshield and a deployed airbag. But then it came out that Mishkov was not injured. So the idea is that the impact of the the airbag is what ended up causing the damage to the windshield. So from all accounts, Mishkov not injured. So that's good. But we saw that damage and you're like, holy shit, like what happened? When you start having like the alcohol thing and the drug thing going around, then you're going, oh shit, like this is about as bad as it could have been. Well, don't worry, friends, because the Match TV report is what is the most notable, because the Match TV thing introduces this idea that there was extortion going on and that Mishkov was essentially robbed. So the whole, like, did he have a passport? Did he not have a passport? What happened? Now, again, can I confirm the veracity of the reporting of Match TV out of Russia? No. But I would like to think that this is a much more logical take on what happened versus, the salacious claim that came out yesterday. So let's just kind of break this down really quickly. So Match TV claims that Mishkov requested that his lawyer make a special statement to Match TV to kind of clarify what happened. And so this is a translation and all that, so it's not going to be perfect. But the situation, according to Match TV, according to apparently Mishkov's lawyer, is that Mishkov and his friend rented a car. There was an accident. Mishkov was in the passenger seat. The driver was sober. No alcohol test was taken from Matvei. He had not had anything to drink, alcoholic. From the point of view of the UAE laws, no questions. Like there is nothing that he did that was illegal. He hasn't committed any kind of offense in the territory of the Emirates. He is, he's like not, there's nothing concerning around him in the eyes of local law enforcement. Moreover, the owners of the car rental service illegally have his passport, and presumably the drivers or somebody else who was in the car, but they illegally have two passports, one of which is Mishkov's, illegal. It is apparently a crime that they're withholding those passports, according to the laws of the UAE. Moreover, the owners extorted about $100,000 from Mishkov, and that information about him would not be disseminated in the media. There's evidence in the form of screenshots of correspondence sent to Matvei Michkov by the owner of the car rental company. There's also testimony from witnesses who have already confirmed it. So you have that. And then there was a second part of this, which we're going to go through this really quickly. So Mishkov apparently tried to contact a local lawyer due to the fact that his passport had been illegally confiscated. And so the terms extortion, blackmail, money laundering have all been kind of thrown out, which is just wild. Apparently his attorneys have already gotten things kind of rolling. So now it kind of falls to Dubai's Department of the Economy. Listen, there is a lot of crazy shit. And this is like one of those times where you just go, could Matvei Michkov have just gone to vacation here in Fort Lauderdale? Could he have maybe gone to Miami? Could he have gone to Maui? Not saying anything against Dubai. And again, a lot of Russian players find themselves in Dubai. I think was it a year or two ago? We saw the picture of Ivan Fedotov in Dubai. So like, it's not an uncommon place for Russian players to go in the offseason. So it's not that. But holy shit, man. Like at some point, now he's young, he's 20. I get it. There has to be a conversation, and I'm sure that there will be a conversation between the Flyers and, Matvei Michkov and his camp. That like, you're a pretty high profile player. You're a rising star, and extortion attempts are going to happen, and you need to make sure everything is on the up and up. You're no longer flying under the radar. You are a widely known player, and your star is only going to continue to expand. You're only become a bigger star in this league and internationally. He's going to have to be a lot more careful. So the good news coming out of it, again, reports are kind of tricky, right? And the veracity of the reporting is kind of, tricky. But it sounds like he was okay. The other people in the car were okay, which is ultimately what matters the most. But the extortion things, the passport being confiscated, not great. Not great at all. Let me see. I'm going to come back over to the comments here really quickly, and we'll go probably call it from there. Yukon456 says, Mish is a good boy. Video guy Amadeo was right. He did send me the tweet at 6 a.m. Let's see. Yukon says, Mishkov is tough. He could have broke the windshield with his head and been perfectly fine. Joe Fisher thinks that there was an accident because Bird pooped on the driver. I don't think that's true, but who knows? Sterenko says, was Fedotov driving? Damn it. No, if Fedotov was driving, there wouldn't have been a driver's seat. He would have sat in the back seat because his legs are so long, because he's so tall. UConn has an accusation there about towards throwing a spike strip. No. Nick Johnson says, can't believe he's not in beautiful Wildwood with all the beautiful beer cans. Yeah. UConn says, no fast cars for any of our good players. The bad ones can, though. So there you go. Anyway, listen, I appreciate everybody being here. I have no idea. I see that Tony Louie and Ford are talking about the video quality being bad. I can't do anything about it. There is no Ethernet port in this hotel room. Episode 100 of the Russ Joy Show. We finally made it. It's 100 episodes. The channel got over 1,000 subscribers, a week or two ago. It's really fun. So if you haven't done so already, like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Usually the video quality, the audio quality is significantly better in the home office. But listen, I promised you that I was going to go on the road. I was going to travel with my stuff, and we're going to do a show. So it's, all kinds of fun stuff. Bus Camper says, congrats on 100. I appreciate that. Wizards Tap, thanks for being here. Zilla, thank you for being here. Stir & Co., thanks for being here. UConn, thank you for being here. UConn also saying, can't wait for episode 1000. Steven asks, question, when's the Snow the Goalie show? I know Bundy was unavailable today. I think he's unavailable tomorrow. Ant and I might do something late tonight, unlikely. Maybe very early Thursday. I would think that by the end of the week, there should be an episode. But I have to promise you that we will do everything we can to try to get a new episode of Snow the Goalie out. The beauty of doing this show is I only have to work with my own schedule. So we got this one up and we're going to keep going. So K-Dub says, Russ is 100. Damn, nice work. If only. Actually, no, not if only. Again, happy birthday to my dad. He's not watching, but just in case he is, happy birthday, Dad. I will talk to all of you on, Langer says, have a nice dinner, Russ. Steak. Oh yeah. We're going to apparently the best steakhouse in these parts of Florida. So I'm looking forward to it. I will report back on Friday. So just to recap, dropped an episode yesterday. A little bit more Sixers focused, right, on the lottery. Some thoughts about Tocchet. Today's show, Tocchet, Mishkov. Friday show, no idea. I might do it from the hotel room early. I might do it from the Fort Lauderdale airport. I might do it Friday night from the comfy confines of my home office. But there will be a show on Friday, come hell or high water. And from what I've learned, apparently it's been raining up where many of you are. So it could be high water. I have no idea. But anyway, I will be back on Friday here on the Russ Joy Show. In the meantime, do me a favor, like the video, share the video, subscribe to the Russ Joy Show on YouTube. And if you like podcast feed, you can go over Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. I will be back on Friday. Until then, this has been the Russ Joy Show, and I've been Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart, and that's also the name of the show. Talk to all of you Friday from either here in sunny Fort Lauderdale or back up in rainy Philadelphia here on the Russ Joy Show. Rick Tocchet is your new head coach. Matvei Michkov, he's okay. Talk to all of you soon.